Welcome back to Pokemon episode summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 222, The Mysteries History. The episode begins right where the last one left off, with Ash and the gang on their way to Ogi Island when they had stopped on a cliff and encountered none other than Richie's Pikachu, Sparky, and were very glad to see him, as it had been quite a long time. And they immediately came to the conclusion that if Sparky was nearby, then Richie was nearby as well. Sure enough, as Ash and the gang were observing Sparky, Richie then appeared behind him. As Pikachu and Togepi played with Sparky, glad to see him, Richie then caught up with Ash and the gang as the two parties explained what they had been doing since the Indigo League the last time they saw each other. With Ash clarifying that he was currently participating in the Johto League by going to all the gyms, and Richie explaining that he had been doing extensive research on a mysterious Pokemon. Ash then questioned Richie what he was doing specifically by Ogi Island, with him clarifying that he was here looking for a mysterious Pokemon, leading Richie to state that he was doing the same thing. Being here by Ogi Island for days at this point, because his research was what led him to this island, as he believed that the mysterious Pokemon was on this island. Further explaining that he had already been by Ogi Island for days at this point, researching the area, but had unfortunately found nothing. Stating that it was hard to find any definitive proof of anything that linked to this mysterious Pokemon, since so many of his research sources that he used to find out information had conflicting information, so he didn't really know what the mysterious Pokemon was really about. Richie then asked Ash and the gang if they had any information on it, leading Ash to confirm that he and his friends were actually looking for it as well, and also told Richie of his encounter with the mysterious creature back near Blue Rock Isle, when him and his friends fell in the whirlpools and the creature ended them, although specified that he only saw a silhouette of the creature. Richie remarks his jealousy towards Ash for spotting the Pokemon before him, leading Ash to claim that he simply just had good luck. Brock argued, though, that Ash seeing the mysterious Pokemon may not have been luck, but rather a desire of the Pokemon, so that it would eventually lead Ash and Richie to reunite, reminding him and Richie that they wouldn't have reunited otherwise. Richie agrees with Brock and states that if him and Ash had both heard that mysterious Mon was on Ogi Island, then it must have been there. So he pointed to Ogi Island, having spotted it in the distance, and decide to go there on Richie's rowboat, as they fully believe the mysterious Pokemon to be there at that point. Meanwhile, on Ogi Island, before Ash and the gang arrived, a boy named Oliver was playing with his lantern, as well as, coincidentally, a silhouette underwater who he called Silver, bearing a striking resemblance to the silhouette that Ash and the gang had saw earlier, only smaller. How he befriended a silhouette, I don't know. But anyways, as soon as Oliver was playing with Lantern and the silhouette, he spotted Ash and the gang arrive on the island in their rowboat, so he told the silhouette to go hide. Soon enough, Ash and the gang approached Oliver and introduced themselves, and asked Oliver what he was doing on the island, since they believed it to be deserted, leading Oliver to confirm, much to their surprise, that he lived on the island with his lantern, being just a regular-ass kid, introducing himself as Oliver. Ash and the gang weren't that surprised at a kid being by himself without parents. I mean, they were currently by themselves. And Ash simply just scans the lantern with his Pokedex to learn more about it, before Richie inquires if Oliver knows anything about a mysterious Pokemon that was supposed to be around the area. And Oliver simply claims that he had never saw one, and suggests that they go to other islands to look. Richie stated, though, that his research had led him to Ogi Island, and Ash and the gang had already checked other islands, and they had found nothing, so they figured that the mysterious Mon would be here. Oliver begins to get nervous, fearing that Ash and the gang may notice the underwater silhouette, coming to the conclusion that that was likely the mysterious Pokemon they were looking for. So he nervously swims away to avoid being asked more questions, as he stuttered, lying that the only Pokemon that he had saw recently was his lantern. Then said goodbye. Ash and the gang simply said bye back, although they were disappointed that Oliver didn't have more info, but Richie stated his belief correctly that the boy probably did have more information, he was just hiding something, as he seemed nervous. Ash and the gang agree with Richie's suspicions, however, they all realize that with Oliver gone, they couldn't ask him anything anyways, so they decide to just go around the rest of the island looking for themselves. When Oliver saw that Ash and the gang had dispersed, he was pleased with himself for not having revealed the silhouette's location, as he then managed to find the silhouette, who had hidden like he had instructed it. When suddenly, the silhouette pulls Oliver underwater, very glad to see that he was safe. When Oliver emerges from the water, the silhouette emerges as well, and hugs him, revealing the silhouette to be none other than a baby Lugia, a Pokemon that Ash and the gang had actually seen before, if you had watched the Orange Islands movie. I haven't done a summary on the movies yet, but just know that the first few from the first couple seasons are actually canon movies, even though the later ones are not. So I will do summaries for the movies eventually. I just plan to do them after I'm done all the episodes, so it'll be in a long-ass time. Anyways, unbeknownst to Oliver, who was still hugging the baby Lugia, him and his Lugia were being spied on by two Team Rocket members. Not Jesse and James, surprisingly. But we didn't know who they were, as they were cloaked in some swimming wetsuits, so we didn't know their full identity. They weren't just spying on Oliver and his Lugia, they were recording them, and they were streaming the footage to an underwater base, to a doctor named Dr. Namba. This underwater base was a Team Rocket base, of course, and Dr. Namba was obviously linked to Team Rocket in some way. Anyways, while Dr. Namba was closely watching the Lugia on the streamed footage, recognized the mysterious Pokemon as a Lugia, and contacted the two Team Rocket members over a headset, leading the two Team Rocket members to immediately pick up, and one of the members to mistakenly address Dr. Namba as Dr. Number. Dr. Namba just shrugs this off, tells them to ignore Oliver, stating that he had an order for them. First joking that he wanted a food order of fish sticks, before clarifying that the order involved the Lugia, being that he wanted to capture the Lugia, who he called by its codename, Mysterious Pokemon X, but also leave it unharmed, so that he could study it. The two Team Rocket members oblige, as they suddenly fire a net on Lugia, as Dr. Namba sends a submarine out from the underwater base. However, when the two Team Rocket members deployed the net, they were spotted by Oliver, so Oliver commanded his Lantern to tackle them, which knocks down the Team Rocket members, and then Lantern returns to Oliver and tackles Lugia's net, destroying it. This allows Oliver to hop on his Lantern and ride it away with Lugia so that he could get Lugia somewhere safe. They dove underwater, thinking that it would make it harder for the Team Rocket members to follow them once they got back up. However, diving underwater proved to be a mistake, as they encountered the submarine that Dr. Namba had sent out. They try to escape by changing direction, but the submarine follows them. Meanwhile, Ash and the gang and Richie were still searching Ogi Island for the mysterious Pokemon, but they of course found nothing still, with Richie remarking how they likely wouldn't find anything unless they questioned Oliver again, since he was likely lying about not having seen anything. Meanwhile, as for our regular Team Rocket members that we all always followed, Jesse, James, Meowth, and of course Wobbuffet, they were spying on Ash and the gang as usual, this time in their Magikarp sub, and once they saw Richie, they became determined to steal both his and Ash's Pikachu. Anyways, back with Ash and the gang. They soon spotted Oliver surfing on his Lantern, along with the Lugia, who had now surfaced above water and were swimming towards Ash and the gang in an attempt to get away from the submarine. Ash and the gang were instantly enamored by the baby Lugia, as were Team Rocket, who recognized it as a Lugia since they remembered the one from the Orange Islands. Once again, because of the movie. As Oliver, his Lantern, and the baby Lugia get closer to Ash and the gang finally spot the submarine and realize that it had a Team Rocket symbol on it, so also realize that Team Rocket were behind the attack, likely trying to capture the Lugia. Ash and the gang, however, expected Jesse, James, and Meowth to be the pilots of the submarine, only for it to be revealed that the pilots of the submarine were actually Butch and Cassidy. That's right, they had returned. They quickly jump out of their submarine and do their motto, as Cassidy throws out a net to capture the baby Lugia. However, before the net can make contact, Ash takes action and sends out his Bayleaf and has it use Razor Leaf to cut the net. This leads Butch and Cassidy to take revenge on Bayleaf as they send out their new Pokemon to battle it, being Cassidy's Houndour and Butch's Hitmontop. Houndour then goes in for a flamethrower, although Bayleaf was able to dodge, but when Hitmontop went in for a rolling kick, this was able to knock down Bayleaf. This leads Richie to help out Bayleaf by sending out a Pokemon that Ash had never seen before, so he uses his Pokedex on it to reveal it as a Pupitar, who Richie had nicknamed Cruz. Pupitar starts off by using Takedown on Hitmontop, leading Houndour to take revenge on Pupitar by using a flamethrower. However, the flamethrower does essentially no damage due to how hard Pupitar's shell was. Hitmontop then jumps back in with a triple kick, going for Pupitar. However, Hitmontop had forgotten about Bayleaf, allowing Bayleaf to use Vine Whip to grab Hitmontop and tangle him up, in turn allowing Bayleaf to throw the still spinning Hitmontop into Houndour. This severely injured both Hitmontop and Houndour, so Butch and Cassidy recalled them, and retreat into their submarine, and then open a hatch on the submarine, hoping to capture Lugia inside with it. However, right as the submarine approaches Lugia, in a Deus Ex Machina moment, a character who we just thought was simply a character of the day, Luca, returns in her new ship and smashes into Butch and Cassidy's submarine. This damages the submarine, allowing Richie's Pupitar to use Sandstorm and have the sand leak into the submarine, which blinds Butch and Cassidy, so they begin to panic and retreat in their submarine, as it was still somewhat operational, although they declare that they would return eventually. However, unbeknownst to Butch and Cassidy, Team Rocket had spotted them, of course, and they were interested in where they were going, so Team Rocket decided to follow them in their Magikarp sub. With Team Rocket and Butch and Cassidy gone, Luca then emerges from her boat and says how she is glad to see everyone is safe, and shows Ash and the gang the silver feather that they had helped her acquire, and revealed that she had come to Ogi Island as well to try and learn more about the silver feather, after hearing about how the mysterious Pokemon was rumored to be seen here. Brock then tries to flirt with Luca, as he states his belief that Luca didn't actually come to Ogi Island to find out more about her silver feather, but rather to see him, although Luca denies this. Ash then turned his attention to Lugia, and tells Richie that he had encountered one before in the Orange Islands as he pats the baby Lugia. Not understanding that it was a baby, questioning, along with Brock, why the Lugia was so small, leading Oliver to explain that it was a baby, adding that it was the same age as him. Ash and the gang instantly cut Oliver off though, questioning why he lied to them about Lantern being his only Pokemon. Oliver apologized for lying, stating he didn't want to, but he felt it was necessary so that he could keep the baby Lugia a secret, since it couldn't fly yet, and that therefore made it vulnerable to people like Team Rocket, who tried to steal it, so he wanted to keep it under wraps from absolutely everyone. Upon hearing his reasoning, Ash and the gang apologized to Oliver and promised to keep the baby Lugia a secret, leading Oliver to thank them. Ash then changes the subject a little bit as he questions how Oliver and the baby Lugia first met and became friends, questioning further if Oliver had actually managed to catch a baby Lugia inside of a Pokeball. Oliver explains that he didn't catch it, and instead they were just friends, and explained how they met. Essentially, a week ago, Him and his lantern were playing in the water swimming around when a storm suddenly arrived. Oliver and Lantern tried to escape the storm, but it caused the waves to become too rough and sent him and Lantern under the water as a result, and they almost drowned. But in a Deus Ex Machina moment, even though he thought he had no help, he had woken up on a nearby beach, thanks to the baby Lugia having saved him. As he then saw the baby Lugia sit by his side, followed closely by the baby Lugia's parent, an actual big-sized Lugia. Thinking that Ash and the gang wouldn't believe this due to how rare of a Pokemon Lugia was, Oliver tried to assure them by stating that he had heard that a Lugia's parent was never far away from its young. Ash, however, did believe Oliver, even without this little fact, because he had spotted the parent Lugia as well back during the Orange Islands, and he told this to Oliver, who was amazed by this. As if on cue, right as Ash mentioned the adult Lugia, it then showed up, and also, as a result of this, Luca's silver feather began to glow red, as she pulled it out of her pocket, noticing the red light, making Luca come to the conclusion that the silver feather must react to Lugia's presence. She wants to go up to the water where Lugia had just swam out of to see if the silver feather would react some more the closer she got to it. But she noticed the Lugia was angry, so she backed away and came to the conclusion that the silver feather may have been glowing red as a sign of Lugia's anger. Ash and the gang and Oliver, knowing that the Lugia was probably angry because it thought that they were going to harm its child, assured the Lugia that they weren't going to do anything to harm it, with even Pikachu and Sparky jumping in defense of Ash and the gang and Oliver. Eventually, the Lugia believed them and calmed down, and sure enough, this caused Luca's silver feather to stop glowing, confirming her theory that it only would glow red when Lugia was angry. With the Lugia now calm, it went up to its child and nudged him affectionately before diving into the water with it to go play, as it had missed its child during its week of absence and wanted to bond with it. Ash was very intrigued by the Lugia swimming and wanted to go see what they were doing as they had dived underwater, so now they weren't visible. So Ash requested that Luca give him some diving gear so that they could go underwater and watch, with Luca revealing that she would gladly do this since she now had acquired even more sets of diving gear, enough for everybody this time. Yay! With that, Ash and the gang put on the scuba diving gear along with Richie and Oliver and go down to watch the Lugia along with Oliver's lantern and Ash's Pikachu as Luca stays on the boat with Misty's Togepi. And Ash and the gang then approach the two Lugia as the parent was feeding its child, and then the child goes up to Ash and playfully headbutts him. The Lugia and its child then jump up out of the water to the surface as Luca observes and comes to the conclusion that the silver feather must have been a feather from Lugia. Meanwhile, as for Jessie, James, and Meowth, they had since put on standard black Team Rocket uniforms and snuck on to the underwater base, with Meowth being under James's uniform. They had obviously been able to sneak on after seeing Butch and Cassidy return there, and begun looking around the underwater base. All James wanted to do aboard this underwater base was locate Butch and Cassidy so he could get his revenge against them, because, you know, the two Team Rocket groups obviously hated each other. So he asked Jessie why they had to bother with putting on these standard-ass black Team Rocket uniforms, stating that Jessie, James, and Meowth were far from the standard Team Rocket members, and they didn't deserve to have to put on these uncool outfits. This led Jessie to explain the reasoning for the standard outfits, and also her reasoning for wanting to come onto the underwater base in the first place, which was so that they could join in on Butch and Cassidy's plan to capture the Lugia, so they could take credit for it themselves and present Lugia to Giovanni, and therefore leave Butch and Cassidy with no reward for their work, stating that they could only do this if they put on regular uniforms and pretended that they were different Team Rocket members, since Butch and Cassidy would never let Jessie and James join in. Meowth and James liked this plan, as they figured that they could finally get credit for completing a job if they stole credit from somebody, as opposed to actually doing the work themselves. So they agreed to help Jessie with her plan, as they approached the room where Butch and Cassidy had since returned to Dr. Namba, and entered the room right as Butch and Cassidy were regretfully informing Dr. Namba that they had failed to capture the Lugia, and it was still out there. Dr. Namba was mad at this, and he was even more mad, as while Butch and Cassidy were informing him of their failure, they, just like the Team Rocket members from before, had messed up his name, calling him Dr. Number instead. This leads Dr. Namba to think that Butch and Cassidy were incompetent, so he figures that they may have somehow forgot what he wanted to do with the Lugia and why he needed it, so he reminds them as Jessie and James listen in, revealing that he wanted Butch and Cassidy to capture Lugia so that he could take advantage of its power and convert that power into a beam, that he could then use his scientific skills to magnify, making Lugia's power even more powerful. Also adding that he had also tried to convert the power of relatively strong Pokemon such as Charizard and Feraligatr into beams, but they weren't strong enough, so he needed the power of a legendary Pokemon like Lugia. Dr. Namba initially requests Butch and Cassidy to go capture the Lugia again. However, he then changes his mind as he believes Butch and Cassidy to be incompetent still, and instead orders them to do a more simple task, such as get him some food, since he was starving. Butch and Cassidy are offended by this, and they instead order some regular Team Rocket grunts to go get the food instead. These regular Team Rocket grunts being the only other ones who were in the room, Jessie and James, with Cassidy specifically ordering Jessie to go get it, even though she didn't know it was her. This leads Jessie to walk out of the room and promise to go to the food storage, although she takes James and Meowth with her. James and Meowth were surprised at how calm Jessie was at the fact that she had to be ordered around by her arch-nemesis Cassidy, only for Jessie to reveal that she was just putting on a calm front so that she wouldn't have been seen as suspicious by Cassidy, as if she revealed her true anger towards being ordered around by her in front of her, then Team Rocket obviously would have been discovered. However, now that Jessie was out of the room, she did not hesitate to let out her true anger anymore, as she went into a tantrum, venting about how much she hated having to serve Cassidy, as James and Meowth simply stood politely and listened, letting Jessie vent. However, Jessie then stated how she wanted to get revenge on Cassidy for real this time by capturing the Lugia before they could, leading James and Meowth to come up with an idea to help her do this. Meanwhile, Ash and the gang, along with Richie and Ash's Pikachu and Luca, were watching the two Lugia swim still as they swam into one of Ogi Island's caves to go get some more food. This led Ash and the gang to realize that they should have a food break as well, so they returned to Luca's boat and then took a break on some land, as the two Lugia eventually followed them, returning from their meal. Just as Ash and the gang started their little meal, and Brock gave both Ash's Pikachu and Richie's Pikachu some Pokemon food. As the baby Lugia played with Lantern in the water, Richie wondered if Lugia spended more time in water or on land, with Brock responding that they only come on land if they raise their children. Just then, Luca looked inside her boat and realized that she was low on numerous supplies, such as food and firewood, so she decided to go back with her boat to the mainland and go get some supplies, affirming to Ash and the gang that she would return in a few hours. While everyone waits for Luca's return, Oliver decides to go swimming with the baby Lugia again. However, as soon as they hop in the water, everyone then notices another child Lugia for some reason. It seems to call Silver, the baby Lugia that we've been following up until this point, over, as Silver eagerly goes to this new baby Lugia and nudges it, playfully. Ash and the gang, especially Richie, were obviously very excited to see another Lugia, since they believed that Lugia were extremely rare, due to them being legendaries. However, when Richie took a closer look at this new baby Lugia, he realized that it wasn't one after all, and was instead a Lugia robot. Richie tried to warn Silver of this, but Silver had already been led away by the robot as they swam together, and then the robot transformed into a cage, capturing Silver. Immediately following this, Butch and Cassidy appear in their submarine as it surfaces from below the water, and pick up the cage with their submarine, laughing as they did so. However, before they could put Lugia's cage inside of their submarine, Team Rocket then surface in their own submarine, of course the Magikarp sub, and do their motto, stating their plan to capture the Lugia for themselves and take it to Giovanni as they jump out of their Magikarp sub in an attempt to grab the cage. This leads Butch and Cassidy to jump out of their submarine as well, and get into a tug-of-war with Team Rocket over the cage, as Jessie and Cassidy, as you may expect, yell at each other and argue about shit, because they hated each other. And while James and Butch didn't really like each other either, they didn't have nearly as much hatred as Jessie and Cassidy did for each other. The tug-of-war and Jessie and Cassidy's arguing gets so intense that Jessie and Cassidy decide to send out their Pokemon to battle each other for the cage, as Jessie sends out her Arbok and Cassidy sends out her Houndour. Jessie tries to go for the first attack, ordering her Arbok to use Poison Sting, but Houndour counters by using Flamethrower, which burns through the Poison Sting, and also burns Team Rocket, also defeating Arbok, meaning that Butch and Cassidy could reclaim the cage. However, Ash and the gang and Richie and Oliver didn't want to let them, obviously, as Oliver swam up to them with his lantern, and Ash and the gang and Richie boarded Richie's boat that he had initially took Ash and the gang to the island on, with Oliver taking the lead. However, Ash and the gang and Oliver couldn't get up to Butch and Cassidy before Butch was able to fire a mechanical arm from Butch and Cassidy's submarine to bring the cage up to the submarine. However, Ash and the gang and Oliver did catch up before the mechanical arm could actually pull Lugia into the submarine, so Ash sent out his Bayleaf yet again, and had it use Razor Leaf to destroy the claw, dropping the cage. Butch sought to get revenge on Bayleaf by sending out his Hitmontop and having it use Rolling Kick. However, Bayleaf was able to defeat Hitmontop with one attack, being a Vine Whip. Butch panicked as he recalled his Hitmontop, but Cassidy just laughed as she ordered her Houndour to use a combination of Smokescreen and Smog to create a cover, blinding Ash and the gang so that they couldn't see the Lugia, allowing Butch and Cassidy to use yet another robotic arm from their submarine to grab Silver's cage yet again, and Cassidy then recalls Houndour back and brings Silver's cage into the submarine as they finally escape. In the process of their escape, Butch and Cassidy's submarine runs over Team Rocket and their Magikarp sub, sinking them down. And the large wave caused by Team Rocket and their sub sinking, in turn, causes Ash and the gang and Richie and Oliver to fall off of their boat and lantern respectively as they fall into the water. When Ash and the gang and Richie and Oliver eventually resurface, they see that Houndour's Smog-Smokescreen combination was now gone, and as a result, they also see that Butch and Cassidy had escaped with the child Lugia, staring in absolute despair at the seemingly empty ocean as they realized that Team Rocket was now gone as well.